I'm gonna be coming out of Matthew 21 and 35, I guess, to 45, verses 45. And the number 21 is significant to judgment. Um Number 21 is a number of judgment. Um 3 times 7 is 21. 3 plus, if you add 7 3 times, it's 21. 7 knows a number of completion. you know uh 21 is a number of judgment. So the this message, I'm gonna call it 21 Savage. You know what I'm saying? Had to lick in my lips, get my lips right. Anyway, the message is gonna be 21 Savage. And see, the reason why a lot of these people do, the servants of the Most High, the way that they do, is because they don't want to be corrected for the things that they're doing wrong. The things that they're doing now, we're talking about in the present. We're not talking about in the past. We're talking about, people that are cloaking themselves as Christians, cloaking themselves as sages and higher ups and, deacons and pastors, but, really, they are undermining the word of Yahuwah. And so judgment has to come, you know, because without judgment there can be no correction. And so this is why, you see a lot of the servants being mistreated, being slandered, being killed, whatever the case may be, because these people who have been put in charge of the vineyard, have been corrupted. You know, uh, it's just like, when Yeshua was being, um, I guess, sentenced or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, as far as like Yahusha and Barabbas, and they was, basically the scapegoat. In the Old Testament, one was, supposed to be for the sacrifice, and then the other one was let go as the scapegoat into the wilderness, which they released the murderer, Barabbas, and sacrificed an innocent man. And so this is the same thing that's going on now. They sit up under and watch all kind of embezzlement, watch them misuse funds, watch them do, every kind of everything up under the sun in these churches. That's not to say that there's not good people in the church. I'm not saying that, but when you're in a position of power, in a so-called position of leadership, you have a responsibility, and that's not to say that you're not human. You see what I'm saying? And that's why it's so important, before you assume the position, that you got all your affairs in order. You see what I'm saying? Because when you're being used at that level, there is a certain spirit of excellence that should be on you. And so, but granted, you know, they have a responsibility to tell the truth. You know, they have a responsibility to make known what sin is. And I've said this before, that, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't know the law. You're still going to be held accountable to the law. So just because you don't know it doesn't mean that you won't be judged. 21 Savage. And so we have profaned the word of Yahweh. We have profaned the temple. You know, we it's just like, you know, with Eli and his sons, how they were accepting profane offerings, like they were accepting, you know, pork. You know, you wasn't supposed to sacrifice no swine on the altar. You wasn't supposed to cut the doves and stuff up on the altar. You wasn't supposed to chop them in half and put them on the altar. You know what I'm saying? These are all the things that we're accepting in the church. You know what I'm saying? We're accepting blood money, drug money. You know, people can be out 6 days a week selling drugs and don't get up and go to work by the sweat of their brow and sell drugs and come into church on Sunday and give their drug money, you know, off the backs of somebody's habits. You know what I mean? Because they got an addiction to money, and these people got an addiction to drugs. So they'll take that money and put it in the tithes and in the offering, and that'll be accepted as an offering. See, when the offering was given, there was not supposed to be no blemish in the offering. When you offered those sacrifices had entailed certain things. The brunt offering, the sin offering, they entailed certain criteria when you brought those offerings in. It had to be so many years old. It couldn't be without spot or blemish. If you were poor and you didn't have a ram or a burnt offering or a bullock or a sheep, if you didn't have either one of those, then you could bring a dove, or you could bring a pigeon, or you could bring flour mixed with oil. You see what I'm saying? These offerings had to be of a certain standard. But we don't care where the money come from. We don't care if the money got blood on it. Just as long as the money is being brought to that's not even an offering. Paul said to present yourself as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, for this is your reasonable duty. So you are the sacrifice. You're supposed to be presenting yourself. You're supposed to be laying aside every weight and every sin that so easily besets you. Casting down every imagination and every high thought and every thought that would try to exalt itself above the knowledge. What is the knowledge of Yahweh? Is this Torah? But instead, this is what y'all do. Listen to another parable. There was a landowner. We know that Yahuwah Savo is the landowner. He owns all of this. Who planted a vineyard. He planted this thing. He put the water here. He put the mountains, the trees. He put everything here. Put a fence around it, which is the firmaments. And dug a wine press, which was the Garden of Eden. And built a watchtower. Then he leased it to the tenants and went to another country. When the harvest time had come, he sent his slaves to the tenant, basically his servants, that's what a slave is, to collect his produce. So he sent them to collect the fruit. But the tenant seized his servants, slaves, and beat one. They beat him. How did they beat him? I know there's probably plenty of, ways you can think how you could beat a person. They probably beat them out of money, beat them out of their homes, beat them out of their cars. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Back in that day, it was probably something different. You know what I'm saying? They probably found a way to steal their cattle, steal their land. Have you ever ran into somebody say, you beat? You know what I'm saying? Some of the beating was physical. They killed another. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they killed his reputation. Some of it was a physical killing. They stoned him to death, judged him to death. He ain't shit. He ain't nothing but a pervert, girl. Girl, he ain't nothing but a two-timing dog. Yeah, that nigga ain't nothing but a bitch. He a bitch-ass nigga. That nigga ain't no gangster. That nigga ain't never did nothing gangster. That nigga gay. Stoned him to death. Again, he sent another slave, more than the first, and they treated them in the same way. This how y'all treat. This ain't talking to the Gentiles. This ain't talking to nobody outside of Yasharel, the so-called Black Americans, the so-called Negroes, the so-called African Americans, whatever you want. This is who I'm talking to y'all. More than the first, and they treated them in the same way. Finally, he sent his son to them. Who was his son? Yahushua HaMashiach. Saying, they will respect my son. They called him the devil, called him Buzzle-Bee. He came doing miracles, feeding the poor, you know what I'm saying, healing the sick, causing the lame to be healed, causing the lame to walk, the deaf to hear, the blind to see, and they called him a devil. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, this is the hire. Come, let us kill him and get his inheritance. They did all that to him because they wanted to kill him out for his inheritance. Because he walked uprightly before the Most High. Because that was the promise that he made to us if we walked uprightly before him. But see, they don't want to walk uprightly before him. They want to take shortcuts. They don't want to put in the work. There's the error. Come, let us kill him and get his inheritance. Who is his inheritance? The inheritance was the land. Your father would leave you some land, leave you some cattle. In this day, your father would leave you houses, would leave you material possessions. So they seized him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. Now, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? They said to him, we will put those ranches to a miserable death and lease the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the produce at the harvest time. This is what's going on now. The lease is up. Out with the old and in with the new. People who gonna do right by Yahuwah. Who not gonna take his name in vain. Who gonna obey his Sabbath and keep it holy. Who ain't gonna make themselves God. Who ain't gonna make graven images out of these cars, Bentley Ventegas and diamonds and jewelries and stuff that y'all make idols out of? The only way that y'all can feel good about yourself. Yeshua said to them, have you never read in the scriptures, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone? So the word is the cornerstone, and we build off of that. But y'all building off your own, leaning to your own understanding, not acknowledging him in none of your ways. This was Yahuwah's doing, and it amazes in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you, the kingdom of Elohim will be taken away from you and given to people that will produce the fruits of the kingdom. Y'all steal people's ideas. Y'all, don't get it twisted. I was inspired by people too, but I was just keen enough to put in the work to write a business proposal that y'all stole, that y'all using, that y'all benefiting, like that barbecue y'all do down there on Greenwood. Yeah, that was part of my business proposal. I would tell y'all who took it, but I don't got to do all of that. I was inspired by, some people that I went to church with. It made me want, but see, I learned about the nonprofit business, you know what I'm saying, when after I came out the penitentiary in 2004. I learned about the nonprofit business from a white boy in the penitentiary when I was taking up welding. But none of y'all was even thinking about nonprofit organizations. The one who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, and it will crush anyone on whom it falls. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard these parables, they realized that he was speaking about them. They wanted to arrest him, but they feared the crowds because they regarded him as a prophet. Shalom, peace and blessings. Shabbat shalom.